Greetings and welcome to a visual presentation, Mastering the Master Schedule, presented by Brandy M. Love for Dr. Derek Robinson, Leadership 7210. Who am I? I'm a 16-year veteran educator. I'm a member of the union. I am a social studies fellow. I write curriculum for summer school. I'm a member of the Tennessee Council for Social Studies. And just a little bit more about me, but that doesn't matter. Scholars 2. With Scholars 2, the joint program between the University of Memphis and Shelby County Schools, we've been under the leadership, advisement, and guidance of Dr. Derek Robinson, who has served as our program lead and advisor. We've also been instructed by Dr. Reginald Green, Dr. Stephen Nelson, Dr. Eli Jones, and mentor James Alexander. What is a schedule? A schedule is a program. It's a printed list. It's an agenda, a plan in hand. One of the things that Dr. Robinson stated is extremely important for us as newly minted administrators is to have a plan in hand. In other words, what can you offer your new school? Well, my plan is mastering the master schedule. Why? Of course, mastering the master schedule, of course, we're talking about middle or high school. Why the master schedule? It affects the entire school population. It addresses student achievement. It also has clearly defined lines of data collection embedded in the schedule. It also addresses all aspects of the Tennessee instructional leadership. Based in instructional leadership, um, the goal of the master schedule is to formulate a master schedule that benefits and maximizes its use throughout the entire building, helping to facilitate professional practice. That's extremely important. Two, the culture of teaching and learning. Of course, as we collaborate together, we're also learning and growing and continuously developing, which leads right into professional learning and growth and proper allocation of resource management. One thing that teachers, students, parents, and administrators all have in common is a schedule, which is why it's extremely important that the master schedule be purposeful, impactful, and offer the largest amount of benefits to all parties involved. This means taking into considerations of student requests, teacher wants, and administrative needs in an effort to maximize the master schedule for the entire school population. The purpose of my study and the purpose of my plan in hand is that we're going to analyze the master schedule to maximize how its impact within the school in an effort to increase overall student achievement, capitalize on educator output, and enhance the overall footprint of the school in the community, be it academically, socially, or both. One of the most important things that I want to start with when you introduce this study is that the master schedule should be completed and finalized before the start of school. According to Stein, it's really disturbing for students to have their schedules change after the school year starts. It brings up lots of anxiety, not just for the student, but also for the parent. Remember, that student has put their time and dedication and energy into a class. They've done assignments, and now they feel like they just lost that. And then they come into a new class, and in this class, they're late. They're a little behind. So there's a little lag feeling there. A detailed, well planned out master schedule should be the product of many voices within the building. However, oftentimes the master schedule ends up being the product of one administrator sitting in an office by themselves. And this tends to happen all throughout the country. Our method with this study will employ survey data, focus group, and in-person interviews. We did pull a random survey population. The participants involved in this study were students, educators, and administrators. The teacher pool, we originally started out with 33 teachers. Of the 33, 25 agreed to participate. Of that 25, 68% were African American, 16% were Caucasian American, 12% were Hispanic American, and 4% were Asian American. Now, thinking about that educator background, 8% had less than 2 years class experience. 4% had 3 to 5 years class experience. 16% of the educators we surveyed had 5 to 10 years class experience. A whopping 28% of the educators we surveyed had 10 to 15 years experience, and the majority group, 44%, had 15 or more years experience in the classroom. Now we've talked about the adult participants. Let's talk about the students. We surveyed a total of 100 students selected at random, 10 students from my homeschool population, 50 students from my night school population, 20 students from an unidentified local high school, and 20 students from a middle school. Of the 100 surveys that were released, 39 were returned. Of the 39 that were actually returned, 27 were completed and returned and utilized for this survey. In addition to that, 5 of the 27 were selected for live student interviews. Our total student participants were 97% African American and 3% Hispanic. Again, we did 3 main research methods: survey, small focus group, live in-person interviews. The surveys were randomly distributed, and both student and educator surveys were open. When they first originally got the survey information, it began with the consent letter, letting them know that this was a research project and that the information gathered will be used in a research study. However, there will be no personal identifying information. And in addition to that, that after you completed the survey or the in-person interview or the small focus group, we also informed you that there will be no additional required contact after completing your original portion. The only thing that we required was that you were frank and honest with all your answers. So, what do we do? The survey questions that were distributed among the student population asked questions such as, what would be your dream student course load? What type of classes would you like to be enrolled in? How long do you feel like a course should be? And at what time certain classes should be offered? And several other questions related to such. For example, one specific question on the survey said, what time do you believe high school students should start school? And versus giving students a choices to select from, we asked for their 3 top time choices. Another question we asked, which was question number 11, it says, which classes should be offered during first period? Should it be math? Should it be English? Should it be science? Should it be social studies? Or should it be an elective? What does the data say about this? Well, according to the United States Department of Education, the amount of absenteeism is highest amongst high school students. About 30% of high school students are chronically absent. By adjusting our times, substantial increases, for example, in Wyoming, substantial increases in first period grade point averages in one or more courses such as English, math, social studies, and science in 3 districts improved after the districts adjusted their start times. One school in particular showed marked improvement literally the entire first semester when they made the adjustment to the school time. In addition to that, the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that middle and high school delay the start of classes to at least 8:30 or later. Why? Doing so will align school schedules to the biological sleep rhythms of adolescents whose sleep-wake cycles begin to shift up to 2 hours later at the start of puberty. By advocating for later school start times for middle and high school students, the American Academy of Pediatrics is both promoting and compelling scientific evidence that supports school start time delay as an important public health measure and providing support and encouragement to those school districts around the country that contemplate that change. Another question that we asked, and we asked this of both students and educators. If you had a choice, which class schedule would you prefer and why? Would it be A, the 7 traditional classes at 50, 55-minute blocks per class, or 4 90-minute classes, or a combination of traditional and block on a regular basis? So what did our results bring us? Key revelations brought to us. We noticed several patterns in our study. However, I want you to note here that these were not the only key findings that we brought out in this research. One of the first patterns that we did notice was that teachers and students alike agree that high school students should not start before 8 a.m. They did not want to come to school at 7:15 or 7:30 or 7:45. They all felt that that was way too early. Most individuals surveyed also agreed to start school at 9 is too late. Talking to teachers and students from this survey and this study, they also agreed that leaving school by 3:30 is a reasonable time because leaving at 4 they felt was too late. Another pattern observed from this research study identified that the majority of responses acknowledged that particular classes offered in the first period slot are crucial to the overall success of many students, especially considering that this is where we have the majority of tardies and absences and students still arriving late to school. Now, the data that supports this research. Estimates from cost-benefit analysis indicate that the financial returns to delaying high school start times, even just by 1 hour, returns for increased student achievement, graduation rates, earnings, these type of things, could be as much as 9 times larger than the cost to actually implement it. So in other words, we know it's going to be a little bit of a struggle that first year because we're changing times. However, those delayed start times could add an additional $83 billion to the economy over the next decade. This is according to Hafer, Specknick, and Troxel. In addition to this fact, also note when students feel that they've been heard and adults actually demonstrate care and sincere concern for their needs, the students have a tendency to push themselves even further. Jansen said, when high school students begin classes after 8:30, the research demonstrates fewer absences, fewer instances of tardies, and better grades in first period. Students also felt that certain classes should be in certain spots on the schedule. For example, 84% of student surveys stated they would never want a math or a science class in that first period slot, with 42% agreeing and responding that core challenging classes should not be offered first period, as this is the time that the majority of students are late arriving or worse yet, not fully alert. Now, not fully alert, 64% of educators agree with the students that some students are still dragging during first period. Most students stated they would love to have classes such as ACT prep during first period versus a core subject. Data. Washam says that the teenage brain is not fully functioning at 8 a.m. The American Medical Association has adopted a policy to encourage reasonable school start times that allow students to get sufficient sleep. The new policy specifically calls on school districts across the U.S. to implement middle and high school start times no earlier than 8:30. According to William Kogler on the American Medical Association board, he said sleep deprivation is a growing public health issue and it's affecting our nation's adolescents, putting them at risk for mental, physical, and emotional distress and disorders. Again, educators and students agreed, where teachers stated that if they were allowed to create the master schedule, first period would be classes such as AVID or electives or band or public speaking. There will be no core classes during first period. 73% of all educators and 86% of students stated that the only students that should be enrolled in core classes first period should be honor students. When this question was asked again, there was a disconnect as most students felt that they were not really informed about such things. For example, asking students their thoughts and opinions on the master schedule was really, really big, as 78% said that they felt like their school did not share information with students. An overwhelming 97% stated they had never been asked their thoughts on the master schedule, and 100% stated that they are happy to have their voices heard. Future research, of course, this study had a small size. Shelby County Schools has over 100,000 students with more than 200 schools. We definitely want to cast a wider population sample, and that data could further be applied to the district. The first initiative involves student surveying everywhere throughout the district, and then again, moving on, adding more teachers, more administrators, more coaches, more facilitators, more counselors. The suggestions coming out of this study: Shelby County Schools invest more time and benefits in the suggested student time frame. So just having the district actually focus a little bit more on those suggested start times. The initiative to create a committee of individuals to develop the master schedule and not just one person. Further review of daily class schedules for students with a focus on the actual timing of certain classes. And lastly, the implementation of the teacher collaboration plan. I'm not going to give you that information here. You'll have to hire me and I will reveal all. But it is truly an awesome plan. Thank you so much. For my research and references, this is where I received all of my research from. And thank you so much for coming out and listening to the visual presentation presented by Brandam Love.